Perfect. All right. Well, welcome to the June 13th Flip to Freedom Academy live coaching call. It's me, Sean Terry, and got some great stuff we're going to cover for this particular call. I'm excited to be here and rock the house. So what has been going on? Well, I can tell you right now the real estate market is on fire. And its inventory levels are decreasing all across the entire country. I'm talking to people across the country where the buyers are coming out of the woodworks right now. The money that's been sitting on the sideline, people are looking for properties, and it's amazing that typical retail or wholesale deals. The numbers are actually for what you can sell them for are increasing. So. And I typically, and what I tell people to do is in your local market, get on all the wholesalers' email lists. So all your other competitors, like the big wholesalers in your particular market, if there are any, get on their email list, and you can find them by simply Googling, your city and wholesale properties or your state and wholesale properties, whatever it might be. And then if you get on their wholesale list, you can see what the other wholesalers are putting out properties for. Now, here in Phoenix, I've seen it to where in 2008, properties were going for like 63% of ARV after repair value, to where now it's almost where they're up to 80 to 85% of ARV. Sometimes even higher. And that's pretty much dictated based upon the supply and the demand of what properties are going for and how much inventory is in the market. So you can get a good gauge of where you need to be. And I always try to price properties to be the cheapest in the area, not the cheapest being compared to other competitors. Meaning, if all my other competitors are putting out at 85% LTV, I'd like to be at 80% or 78%, whatever it might be, if that's what the number is. But watching that number based upon what your other competitors are doing will give you a good gauge of where you can put out properties. Now, you don't want to be the guy that all the competitors are putting out properties at 85% LTV and you're putting your properties out at 60% LTV, and they're flying off the shelf. Yeah, that's great, but you're leaving money on the table, substantial amount of money on the table. So that's one thing to consider. I would definitely get on other wholesalers' list and see what they are doing. So like I said, the market's is great right now. I believe that we're in the next anywhere 3 to 5 to 7 years, we're going to go through an upswing where there's there's reduced inventories. I think interest rates either they'll stay the same or they'll go up or whatever. But we'll see a upswing or a bull market in real estate coming up, where now we all have a phenomenal opportunity to make an absolute fortune in this market right now. So the bottom line is that now's the time not to hesitate if you're kind of on the fence or you're not giving 110%. And I know, let's say you're working a job and you have your 9 to 5 job, whatever, and you're working it, outside of that, they'll have time. Guess what? There's lunch breaks, there's weekends, there's after work, there's before work, whatever case may be, don't hesitate. Give it everything you've got. Meaning, if you're saying, well, should I put out 50 letters? I got an email from someone that says, maybe should I put out 50 letters a week? Increase it if you can. If you can put out more, put out 200 letters a week. Put out, and he said, okay, should I put out 50 letters a week or mail all, 700 letters right now? And see, me, I'm just like, mail all 700 letters right now, deal with the calls coming in, and you get there faster. Obviously, the more leads you get coming in, the more results and more success you're going to have. So, so why spread it over time when you can just go out, get the deals, and deal with calling the people back and talking to them. You might have to work some more hours and energy around your job and stuff, but hey, you'll get through those and you'll find the deal and you can make it work. So now's the time to take advantage of it and get going. Now, on this particular call, we're going to talk about deal structure. Okay. We're gonna talk about deal structure, how to structure deals for fast profit. Now, if you're not plugged into the Flip to Freedom, here I post podcast up here, literally, every week or every other week or whatever, depending on what's going on. But, here I post the podcast. So make sure you go in and listen to these. You can stream them, right? And this is an important one. Definitely listen to this one, 89. I just recorded this one. But go ahead and listen to this because you can stream it online or you can watch it. You could listen on iTunes or Zune or whatever other mechanism you like to listen to it. But I talk about how to take a $50,000 a year wholesaling business to a $500,000 a year just by doing three small tweaks. Actually, it's 4 tweaks, but but it's interesting. So if you're not plugged into the podcast, make sure you plug in because I have here 89 different episodes, which each one's an hour, so 89 different hours of content on there that you could go in and listen to. In between these coaching calls. And also, obviously we have the Flip to Freedom Academy, so if you're like, Flip to Freedom Academy, we have all the videos in there you can watch, you can learn, step by step what to do. This is the kind of plug-in, like if you're driving down the street, like I listen to podcasts, like if I'm driving to an appointment or you're in a commute in the morning to work or whatever, this is a great way to plug in to, get that extra learning in, which is great. Okay. So now let's get into what we're going to talk about. So what we're going to do here is we are going to cover basically right here, how to maximize each lead by structuring deals for maximum profit and saleability, right? We're going to talk about that. And then after that, we're going to get into questions. So let's get right into it. All right. So the bottom line is this, and let me talk about the big picture here. And we talked about this, before, and I talk about it in the Flip to Freedom Academy. I talk about it on the podcast. The big picture is that there are marketing channels, okay? And we have leads that come into the funnel. Now, those marketing channels could be direct mail, right? Those marketing channels and direct mail, could come down to mailing an inheritance list or mailing an absentee owner list, number 2, or mailing a probate list or mailing, just doing a blanket mailing to specific zip codes that maybe you want to target, right? It could be mailing a divorce list. It could be mailing vacant properties, whatever the case may be. So direct mail, there's a lot of different channels that you can scale into with direct mail. And then there's online. There's Google AdWords. There's, there's search engine optimization where you optimize websites to get ranked in Google so you get traffic there. There's video where you can do YouTube, type of things. And there is article writing where you can submit to articles that you'll get ranked in online as well. So there's other different channels that you can build out. And I talk about that in, I think, module 2 or 3 or whatever, where it talks about, the different channels that you can optimize. And the goal, of course, is to max out each channel in your market. Once you max out each channel in your market, then you could consider going into a potential different market. But the bottom line is that you have leads coming into the funnel from all these different channels that we have. Right? Direct mail, online, we've got bird dogs, we've got bandit signs, we got vacant properties, we've got, whatever the case may be. Those are all different channels that will, if you look at this funnel, this picture on here, it's people coming into the funnel. Now, on the other side of the funnel, deals come out as a result. Now, what's the difference between someone ultra successful and someone that's not? Is that they stuff tons and tons and tons of leads in the top of that funnel from all different channels, right? So the question becomes, how do I make $1 million a year wholesaling properties? Well, how you make $1 million a year? You max out each one of the channels. You don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be, you have the special skills or anything like that. All you have to do is get great at maxing out each one of these different channels so you have leads coming in consistently. Now, consistency is a huge portion of the business, because if you mail, people go out, I'm going to mail 700 letters, and then they kind of sit back, right? And they go, okay, I'm going to wait for these 700, these calls to come in, and maybe they're sending a Yellow letter, and they get, anywhere from 30, 40, 56, 60 calls coming in. They're going, wow, I got a 10% response, and they're talking through these, through these 70 different leads, and they're sorting through, and they might get a couple deals that come out of those, right? So, and that's in, say, they send that out in June, right? And all of a sudden they send out their 700 letters, and they're dealing with the calls and the people coming in and stuff like that. And then July comes, they don't really have a campaign going because they're still talking to there. And they go, August comes, and they go, well, I've got to get some more leads coming in. Maybe, I'll take some of the, money I've earned from, doing the couple deals, and maybe in August and 15th comes around, I go, I got to get the letters out. So then you turn around and you say, okay, I'm gonna get a list, and I'm gonna do marketing again, and and by the time you get your marketing out, it's August, it's September 1, right? So now it's September, that another 700 letters hit again, and now it's September. Well, if you want to make it big in this business, that's not how you do it. If you want to make it big in the business, you set a plan and you say, okay, listen, I'm going to max out each channel I possibly can. As soon as we just have all our mail lined up, right? So it's, okay, this is going out here, this is going out here. We've got 12,000 that just dropped 2 days ago, or actually almost 13,000 units that's dropped 2 days ago. We already have the campaign set up that's going out, for our inheritance, for our probate, for our absentee owner. These mail campaigns are already lined up and ready to go out, are in the process of being deployed as we talk about right now, not including having all of our web stuff presence and stuff like that. So those are being deployed as we talk right now. So it's the consistency of basically is having it set up where you're consistently ramping it up every single month, and having your mail dates of when you're going to launch those. Now, obviously, people are going, well, it takes money to be able to do that and have those set up. That's what we talked about, and I've talked about, probably 100 times, are scaling into the business. We really talked about that at the Extreme Freedom Live event, which was absolutely incredible. We had over 100 people there, and it was great. And we talked about how to scale it from just starting out, from going to your first check to scaling it into $1 million business by the process of reinvesting 15%. And we kind of took that and expanded that. So the goal is leads coming in. As a result, at the end, deals come out. So now what happens is, now we have deals, right? We have leads that come in. How do we maximize each lead to make the most amount of money? Okay? Because I remember when I first started, all I would look for is properties with equity. If properties had equity, and I would try to negotiate the best deal possible, then, I could potentially make a profit. But what about the deals that had limited equity or no equity, or maybe had little to no equity, or whatever the case may be? They had, what about those? What I do with those deals? I didn't do anything with those deals. I just passed on them because I didn't think there was a money making opportunity. So the number one focus is structuring the deal to exit the property fast. Okay, because remember, we're wholesaling a property. That means we have a time frame. We're going to sign a contract with a seller, right, for a price or terms or whatever the price might be, and we're going to have a time frame. And that closing time frame could be 30 days, it could be 45 days, it could be 60 days, whatever the case you can negotiate, right? The longer the better. But some sellers don't want to wait 60 days for the property to close. So typically it's a 30-day close. So the goal is to structure the deal, right, so you can sell it no problem within those 30 days, okay? So you can sell it. So you have to make that property the most sellable asset you possibly can, okay? So it's highly, highly sellable. So give me an example. Let's say if we're going to sell brownies. right? If we're going to sell brownies, you know, you want to make it the juiciest. You want to make it the moist. You want to put chocolate chips inside there. You want to make it dripping, right? So when people look at this, they're going, holy cow, man, that is the most tasty. I got to have, you know, that brownie, right? Or, you know, or you could make it this bland. You could make it, you know, dry. You could make it no frosting on it, no chocolate chips in it, you know, nothing, right? You could just make it this hard, crusty brownie. So which did you prefer? You prefer the one that's that. So how do you make a deal so stinking juicy, right, that a buyer has to have it, you know, and it's a no-brainer? Okay, well, that's what we're going to talk about. So now, lead scenario. There's properties that have equity, which are easy, right? Properties that have equity. There's properties that have some equity. There's properties that have little to no equity, and there's properties that have they're upside down. So this is a lead scenario, okay? So if we go back to the funnel and we look at that funnel, and outside the other end, you're going to have these different scenarios. There's a lead that's going to come in, and like I met with a lady yesterday. Holy cow. It was, I'm telling you, okay. First off, great deal. House is free and clear. It's worth probably around, I don't know, 90,000. It's a very hot area, high cash transaction area. Property's free and clear. It's worth 80 on a wholesale basis. Bank-owned properties are selling for 80,000. Okay. ARV probably all fixed up 100,000 plus, right? High cash transaction area. So I met with this lady, and this lady I feel so sorry for because you see people, you know, and especially in this situation, because there's two types of things. There's distressed property and there's a distressed seller, right? And sometimes you have both. And when you have a distressed property and you have a distressed seller, right, you know, you're going to be coming in contact with people that are at the lowest point of their entire life, right? And there has to be some sort of compassion there, right, working with these people. So I met this lady yesterday, and she is a mess. Her first husband died of cancer, right? Second husband died of cancer. She's like an avid smoker. Her fiance, right? I know her second husband died because he's an alcoholic. He would wake her up in the morning, right? She would be working, and she would come home from work. So she worked nights, and she'd come home around 5 o'clock in the morning. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, he would make her take him to the bar. He would go to the bar all day till 2 o'clock. He'd make her pick her up from the bar. He'd come home. He'd take a power nap for 2 hours and make her take her back to the bar by like 4 o'clock, and he'd be out doing whatever, and then she'd go to work. Okay. And if he didn't, he beat her with a stick. Now, that was her second husband. He died because he had liver failure, alcoholic, a mess, died early. And now she had this fiance of this guy who, both avid smokers. He died of cancer 6 months ago, and the insurance money paid off the house, right? And she looked. Now, have you ever seen the movie Snow White? Right, the movie Snow White. In Snow White, they had the witch, right? They had the pretty witch, right? And then she turned herself into that ugly witch where her nose is all and her face is all ugly and she's wrinkled all the heck and whatever, and she's all crinked over and stuff. That is exactly what this lady looked like. And she was in her 50s, unbelievably. So, you know, and she was just beaten down with life. And I look at that and I'm going, holy cow, man. It's just, you know, some people have had it tough, you know, in life, you know, in this world because of their thoughts and their actions and their beliefs and what they do and their habits and stuff like that. So you're going to run into distressed sellers and distressed, you know, properties. So in this particular case, you know, I'm talking to her. I could have easily got the property for $30,000, you know, $30,000, you know, all day long, twice on Sunday. But, you know, because I have somewhat compassion, whatever, instead of making, you know, $30,000 in a deal, I was like, you know, I'll give her $50,000, which is probably the highest, you know, I could pay for it, right? $50,000, I'll sell it for 60 and make 10 instead of making 30, because it, you know, because this is her This is retirement. So we're going to help her, right? We're going to basically help her line up a moving company so she can move out. She's going to go move into a trailer up north so she can get out of the heat, which is very cost effective. We're going to give her, upon closing, half of the proceeds up front, which is $25,000, and then the other half when she delivers the keys, right? So she has money that she can move out. So we're trying to structure it. That's a good scenario. Now, I know for me that if any other wholesaler came across her, they would try to get the deal for $20,000, take advantage of her, and then close on it and kick her out of the property, right? So and what happens is there will be deals where you can make a fortune on, and then there will be other deals to where you have to kind of use your compassion on the situation. So anyways, I don't know why I told that story, but the bottom line is that you will have properties with equity that you can negotiate. I got another deal under contract where I've sold it for $49,000. We got under contract for $19,500. What? That's a $30,000 deal. It's investment property. The guy let run down. He just wanted to get rid of it. I told him 19. He said 19,500. He said done, and we're closing the deal, $30,000 deal. So those deals come along too. But but how it handles it. Anyways, so the bottom line is this: is you got leads that come in. Property has equity, some equity, little low equity, and property is upside down. So let's talk about properties with equity. Now, what you want to do is sign a contract with the seller at 70% of the ARV after repair value, less repairs, less profit. So, and this is the typical wholesale formula, subject to, right, knowing what other wholesalers are selling properties for. So, for an example, if everyone's in the marketplace is selling at 80%, well, you don't want to put your property out at 80%. At 65% LTV or of ARV. You want to put it out at say 78%, right, to try to maximize profit. So, anyways, in this scenario, 100,000 times 70% minus 10,000 repairs minus 10,000 profit equals $50,000 contract price. Okay, so that's your contract price. That's the contract price you would negotiate, for the property, and you have a $10,000 built-in profit on that particular deal. So now the goal is to be able to price the property, the cheapest available property within the subdivision, right, that's available for a buyer to come in. So if a buyer is going to purchase a property, a cash buyer, in a particular area, if you can be the cheapest one available, then you have a good argument, I guess you could say. You have a good argument because, you can say, listen, there is no other properties available right here, and I am the cheapest one available, right? So that's what you want to look at. Price it and think about it so you can be the cheapest one available, and then that will give that property, right, because you're the cheapest available and because there's potential equity in it and you negotiated it, that will give it that moist, chocolate brownie tasting, deal where people look at it and going, wow, this is the cheapest property in the whole entire area, and there's some built-in equity in there. I want to jump on this thing. And then you can play that whole competitive game like I do, where you call up a buyer and you say, hey, listen, I got this ridiculously smoking deal. Now, remember, you're in sales. We talked about this at the Extreme Freedom event. We're in sales. We got two different brownies, right? We got a brownie. You can take the brownie and you can say, here, I got this chocolate brownie for sale. You want to buy it, right? That's scenario one. Scenario two is saying, listen, you have no idea. This is the most unbelievable brownie that you will ever touch your lips. It is made from my great-great-great-grandmother's recipe that has went down in history as unbelievable brownie. I'm telling you, once you put your mouth around this brownie in your lip and you taste this thing, it's like being in heaven on earth. It is the moistest brownie. There's chocolate chips inside that just drip. There is frosting on it. This is just the secret recipe frosting. And I'm telling you, if you taste this brownie, it's going to put you in another world. It's unbelievable. Now, if you were going to purchase a brownie, right, and it's presented one way, here's a brownie, would you like to buy it? Or the other way, which I just described, which would you pick? Right? Oh, well, of course, you're going to pick the brownie that's, I got to have that brownie, right? Now, could you charge more for that brownie? Of course you could charge more because it was presented correctly. So people ask me, well, how do you sell properties so quickly? And, how do you do it? I present properties in their best light. So to a cash buyer, right? And I surveyed my list at one point, and I said, what is your biggest decision point on buying properties? Well, one of the biggest decision point of buying properties is equity. So I call up a buyer. I said, listen, you would not believe this deal. This is an off-market deal. It's never been listed. Nothing's available in the area, even close to the price I'm talking about right now. And most of the properties, ARV, are going for, say, $100,000 or so. The bank-owned properties are going for $60,000 to $80,000. And listen, I got this property. We did blast blanket mailing, and this particular deal came in. I can offer it to you today for $49,000, but I need to answer ASAP because in 48 hours, I'm going to blast it out to my entire list. And I don't want my phone's going to ring off the hook for this thing. And I'm trying to kind of, I don't want to deal with all the calls coming in. So I'm giving you the opportunity to make a decision on this property before anybody else sees it because nobody knows about this deal, only you and I. So I need a decision ASAP by tonight because like I said, I got a couple other calls to make and it's going to hit the list. So what I'm doing is I'm positioning the property. So what does that do to that particular buyer? That buyer's going, holy cow, if I don't make a decision on this thing, I've got to rush over there, drop everything I'm doing, and I'm going to go over there and I got to check it out and I got to do my numbers. What's the address? Let me find out more about it. And do that. I sold 2 other properties the exact same way on one phone call saying that exact same thing. And the guy's like, done, I'll take it. And without even looking at it, sent the contract, opened up earnest money, closed it 3 days later. So it's how you position the property. All right, so property has some equity. Now, example, property is worth $100,000, seller owes $80,000. Right? What do you do? If you don't know what to do in this particular scenario, then you're losing money. Right? The leads are coming in the funnel, they're coming out, and money's just dripping out all around you. So property's worth $100,000, seller owes $80,000. It could be any scenario. Property's worth $200,000 and seller owes $180,000. Property's worth $500,000, sellers owes $400 and whatever thousand. Right? So in this particular case, the objective on this to make it a juicy, tasty brownie and all that stuff, the objective is to give the seller as little cash as possible and negotiate the longest term possible on the loan. So here's the big picture. What we want to do is we want to keep the existing $80,000 loan in place, and we want to do it for the longest term possible, right? Minimum 5 years. So you want to do it 5 years. If you can get longer, go ahead and get longer. And the goal now is to give the seller as little cash as possible, right? Because there's, in this particular case, there's little equity in the deal. So you want to structure to keep the $80,000 loan in place via a contract for deed or what's called an agreement for sale for a minimum of 5 years. Okay, so that's how you structure it there. Now, first off, let me tell you this. The number one thing is there has to be motivation. Because if we go back to the funnel, what are we looking for when we're sorting through leads, right? We're looking for motivated sellers. This will not work if you don't have a motivated seller. You've got to have a motivated seller. Now, what's a motivated seller? A motivated seller is a seller that has to get out of their situation, either for a foreclosure, either for divorce, either for they just got to move. They've been transferred. They just want out of the property. It's a property. They moved to another property, and now they have to get rid of this property because they can't afford 2 mortgages. Whatever the case may be, there has to be a motivation behind it to be able to make this work. Okay. Because if there is no motivation, then the seller's going to go, well, maybe I'll just hang on to it and just make the payments on it or whatever. In this case, you're looking for the motivation. So now you're going to structure the deal where you're going to say, okay, Mr. Seller, listen, you know what? You could try to sell it in the open market. You could, just hold on to it as a rental property. You could just let it go to foreclosure or whatever if you can't make the payments. Or what we could do, Mr. Seller, we could keep the $80,000 loan in place, right, for the term of 5 years. And what's going to happen is that either myself or a buyer that I line up will make payments directly to a title company. The title company will make payments directly to your bank, and you will get a statement every single month. Okay. And now what we can do is we can give you, Mr. Seller, $2,500 cash at closing, right? And this is an example scenario. It's obviously going to vary per person and needs and stuff like that. But for this example, we'll give you $2,500 cash at closing. We'll keep the $80,000 loan in place for the term of 5 years. Now, their question is going to be two things. Number one, what happens if the payments aren't made, right? Well, Mr. Seller, if the payments aren't made, because we're doing a contract for deed or an agreement for sale, there is no judicial foreclosure process that you have to go through. So what will happen is the title company, or maybe you, will send out a default letter, and if there is no cure, right, in a certain period of time, depending on the state you're in, then the agreement or the contract will become null and void, and the property will be back in your possession. Okay, so now, and then call me up and I'll help you find somebody else, to do the property, and maybe you'll get, instead of $2,500, you could get some more cash. But any case, that would be the worst case scenario if the seller, for some reason, defaults. If the buyer, some reason defaults. Now, on the other question is, what happens after 5 years? Okay, now pay out on loan, what happens after 5 years? Well, a couple different things, Mr. Seller. The buyer would then pay off the $80,000 loan, or whatever the balance is on the loan, right, at that time. They could pay it off. They could write a check for it. They could potentially refinance it depending on their credit. Or they could sell the property, or they could renegotiate with you if they so decide. Obviously, it's your discretion if you want to give them more time. But the bottom line is that that's their options to basically pay that off. So that's how you work that particular deal. Now, how do you sell the deal? Well, selling the property, you want to market it to an investor / retail buyer, whatever, for $12,500 down with seller financing of $80,000 for 5 years. So what did you give the seller? You gave the seller $2,500, right? You kept the loan in place for 5 years, right? So you're marketing it for $12,500 down. So why is this an advantage to a buyer? Why would a buyer go, wow, this is a juicy brownie, right? Because number one is that they don't have to qualify for the $80,000 loan, right? Your due diligence of what you're going to do is you're going to make sure they can afford that, and obviously you're going to get the down payment of $12,500. So I typically do an income verification check to make sure that they can afford an $80,000 loan, whatever the payments are. The payments, let's say the payments are $700 a month. I want to make sure they can afford it, or if they have a job, or they've had a consistent job. That they can do that. You don't want to put someone in a house like this and take their $12,500 if they can't afford to make the payments on the property. It's just setting it up for failure. You want to have someone that can make the payments, has a consistent job, has some job history, and stuff like that. So that's kind of a qualification I put them through. Do I check credit? No, I don't put a lot of heavy weight on credit because everyone's credit, from this whole market crash or whatever, has got annihilated. So the bottom line is the qualifying factor is the down payment, number one, and two, the affordability. Make sure that they can afford it. Okay. So now, why is this a deal for a buyer? Number one is they don't have to come up with $80,000. They don't have to qualify for $80,000. And number two, they can get into a property, $100,000 property, for only $12,500 down. It's very easy. They can get in the property. Now they can control that property, and that's leverage. So if the property increases in value to, say, from $100,000 to $120,000, the cash on cash return for that, if they decide to sell, goes through the roof because they're controlling a $100,000 property for only $12,500 down. Now, what happens? Seller receives the $2,500 and you receive the $10,000, right? Because the total cash coming to closing is $12,500. The $80,000 stays in place for the term of 5 years. The $2,500 goes to the seller and the $10,000 goes to you. So you make the spread on the down payment differential. Okay? Seller receives $2,500, you receive $10,000 because the buyer put down $12,500. Now, what if you could get the buyer to put down $22,500? Well, the seller would still get $2,500, but you would make $20,000. These deals are plentiful. I guarantee out of you do all your marketing stuff, these deals come in like crazy. So if you're on a wholesale basis, right, if the scenario is for every 25 leads equals one wholesale deal with equity, well, here you can get another 4 or 5 deals by structuring properties just like we talked about. Now, what are the key components? The key component is you have to have a good title company that understands how to do agreement for sales or contracts for deeds, or they can understand it. So what you want to do is talk to them about saying, hey, how can you structure a deal, and have them tell you, have the title company, instead of you going into the title company saying, I need to do this, 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 and this, give them a scenario. Say, listen, I have a seller that wants to sell the property. They owe $80,000. The house is worth maybe $100,000 or so, and they don't care what it's worth. How can we purchase the property and keep the loan in place for, say, the term of 5 years? Can you tell me how you would do this at your title company? And let them tell you how they could structure that particular deal. Now, like I said, make sure you have a title company that has experience behind them, at least 15 to 20 years experience or 10 years experience, so you have someone that knows what the heck they're talking about. If you come with this scenario with a new title person that's only been in business for 2 years, you're going to have an issue. I can tell you that, because they're not going to get it. Now, what if the property has little to no equity? All right, scenario. Let's say, for an example, property is worth 100, the seller owes 95. Now, how many of those deals have come along? Tons, right? You know, a deal comes in, you're talking to the seller, oh yeah, I'm motivated. I just got transferred to another state. I got to get rid of this house. I can't afford 2 mortgages, and I bought the property, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or whatever, and I owe $95,000, and you realize it's worth $100,000. You go, listen, Mr. Seller, you realize you have no equity. Yeah, I know. I don't know what to do though. I can't do a short sale because I don't have a defining, what do they call it? One of those, not stories, but what's it called? Those, I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, a hardship, right? Some people, if they don't have a hardship, they're not going to make up a hardship, right? They're not going to do that. But let's say they don't have a hardship. So in this case, I moved. I got transferred jobs, but I can't afford 2 mortgages. I can't do a hardship letter because it wouldn't be true, right? But the property's worth 100, and it's I owe 95. If I try to list it with a realtor, I'm going to have to pay all the commissions and stuff like that. And by the time I don't have money to come out of pocket to try to get the deal done, I don't know what to do. Do you have any solutions? Oh yeah, Mr. Seller, I got a solution. So the objective again is to give them a little cash to seller and get the longest term possible. Now, a property that has little to no equity, you want to negotiate a longer term to give the property time to either appreciate or pay down the loan. Okay. So now let's say you structure to keep the $95,000 loan in place via a contract for deed or agreement for sale, very same thing, for 5 years plus. So let's say you do 10 years because now you need the extra time to be able to pay down the loan, or be able to have the property potentially appreciate over the time. Now, like I said, we're going through a bull market. So, by getting these deals either for yourself, right? This is how I structure deals where I hang on to. For properties that I'm going to keep in my portfolio, I look for properties not like this, the one before, where there's equity in the property. I can keep a loan in place. I can give the seller a little cash, and the property is in good condition. Okay? But these type of properties, you can flip these all day long. Now, you want to give the seller, let's say in this scenario, because there's little to no equity, $1,000. You want to keep them motivated so they come in and sign docs. Now, selling. How do you sell the property? Market to a retail buyer for $11,000 down with seller carry for 5 to 10 to 15 years, whatever you negotiate. Okay. So seller will receive $1,000. You receive the $10,000. So what's going to happen is the buyer is purchasing the property for basically $105,000 or 100 and let me see, what was it before? Before it was before it was so 80,000. Okay, 95, right? So 105. They put $106,000. So they're purchasing the property for $106,000, right? Which is okay because they got seller financing in place. Okay, so seller, they market the retail buyer for $11,000 down. They're buying the property for $106,000, right? That's the purchase price, right? Of which $11,000 is a down payment, and the balance $95,000 is the seller carry for 5 years. Seller receives $1,000 at closing, right? And you receive the $10,000. Now again, could you sell this, right, for $21,000 down? Yes, you could. You could sell it for $21,000 down. You can make a $20,000 profit on a property that has no equity. Now, what's the juicy brownie for the buyer? Well, think about it. A lot of buyers, like we talked about, credits got annihilated because of the real estate market crash. But they have good income. They have cash, right? But they can't buy a property right now. What do? They're going to have to rent. So instead of that, they can come in and they can purchase a property for $11,000 down, $21,000, $22,000, whatever the number is, right? They can buy that for the down payment, and they can still have controlling interest in the property via a contract for deed or agreement for sale, right? So they're building equity. They're purchasing a property now. They can go in and fix up the property. They can go in and paint the property. They can do what they want to do with the property to clean it up and do everything, and they're building it. And, they build their credit over the next 5 to 10 years or whatever. Then they can refinance out of it or sell it or whatever. But they're basically locking into a position now. There are tons of buyers in the marketplace for this type of product all day long. So now, what about a property that's upside down? Example, property's worth 100 and the seller owes 130. What do you do with that deal? Right? This is what I do, is you can outsource the lead to a short sale expert. Okay, what you want to do is find a short sale expert that you can meet with and you can build a relationship with in your current market. I don't do short sales. I don't negotiate short sales. I don't flip short sales. I don't do short sales. But what I do is I'll outsource the lead to a short sale expert, and the short sale expert will then negotiate that deal and either list it or sell it or flip it or whatever the case may be. Now, what I typically do, now you could flip the property, right? If you decide to flip the property, there's no resale restrictions on the property. You could, after it's approved and done, right, you could flip the property. Like I said, I don't do a lot of short sale flips. There's a Barron's member, his name's Randy Doherty. He does a lot of short sales, right? So we outsource leads to him because he's the short sale expert, and he'll flip short sales, okay? I don't flip them, he does. And what we can do is we receive a lead generation fee. Now, you can't get paid a commission if you're not a realtor, right, for sending like a referral fee. But what we do is you can get a lead generation fee. They can pay on a per lead basis depending on the quality of the lead. So that's what you can do if the property's upside down, and that's how you structure it to make each property, each lead that comes in, you can determine, which ones they are. Does the property have equity? So a lead scenario comes in. It comes in, does the property have equity? So you're talking to the seller, and the seller goes, yeah, it's free and clear, or we owe, $10,000 on the property, and it's worth $90,000. You look at the numbers there. So they're going, holy cow, you're in your mind, you should be going, bing, 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 property has equity. I want to try to negotiate 70% less repairs, less profit. Or if the other one comes in, a lead comes in, and they go, you're talking to the seller, you find out there's motivation there, there's an impending event that they have to sell, and then you talk to them, they go, well, they owe $80,000, it's worth $100,000, you see there's not a lot of equity there. In your mind, you should be going, bing, 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 holy cow, this is potential. I have motivation in the seller. Now I want to structure the deal to make it as sellable as possible in the marketplace for an investor buyer, right? Or for an end user buyer. How do you find those buyers? Same. You blast it out to your same cash buyers list, right? And buyers will come in because they're looking for buy and hold where they don't have to dump all the cash out, okay? Or you can put it on Craigslist for seller financing. Your phone will melt off the hook. If a property has little, no equity. So you got the leads coming in, a lead comes in, the guy calls up and says, listen, I got to get out of this house. I'm just, I'm moving, something's happening, whatever the case may be, I got to get out. But the problem is I think my property's upside down. I don't owe a lot and I don't have money to come out of pocket to get rid of it. Is there anything you can do? And you say, yeah, there's definitely something we can do, and structure it to where you sell it to a retail buyer and you make the down payment spread, or if a property is upside down. So that's when you're talking when those leads coming in. Okay, so this is incredibly important. Because when you're spending money on marketing, you're putting out letters, and you're putting out those, say, 700 letters a week, whatever, and the leads come in. You want to be able to maximize each lead. Now, what you don't want to do is try to structure a deal with a non-motivated seller. The key component is determining motivation. Once you determine motivation, then you can be able to structure these deals, and this is called creative financing, to be able to structure these deals so you can get out of the deal. I met with a seller on Saturday. His name's Richard, right? He's like 84 years old. He's wealthy. He's a retired attorney judge, has a property. Now, property's worth about 200, and talked to him about it, and I offered I think it was like 110 or 115 cash or whatever it was, and what happened in this particular scenario the motivation just wasn't there, right? He kind of acted motivated, kind of pretend he was motivated, but the motivation wasn't really there. Now, the guy was a real nice guy. I had a great time talking to him. The house was nice. But it definitely needed about $25,000 to get it up to par. So, but after talking to him, he would take no less than $140,000. Well, that doesn't work. Now it would work on a potential seller carry, but he wanted all the cash, in that particular property. So, and he fronted the street and he had commercial behind him. So you really couldn't push that $200,000 number. It's more like a $175,000 number, where 140 plus 25, the numbers wouldn't really work. I talked to him about seller financing, but again, the motivation wasn't there. So that's the potential of what you can do with these particular deals. All right, so now I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, okay. All right, so if you have a question, go ahead and type it in. I'm going to go through, basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going through, and basically how these questions are posted, so you understand, is there's no thread. There's not like a question thread. It's all done on time. So if someone puts a question in, like Tim Walker puts a question at 11, and then Juanita Johnson puts in a question at 11, and Dan Ripley puts a question at 11:02. It's all just based on time. So I'm just going to go through and answer these questions one by one. Okay. Okay, so Tim Walker, he says, do the potential buyers have cash only? Okay, do the potential buyers have to be cash only buyers, or can the people lined up who may need financing for these homes, or can you have people lined up to have financing? Okay, that's a great question. Sorry, my eyes for some reason went buggy on this screen. Anyways, so Tim, great question. Great question. All right. Most of my buyers don't pay cash. All right. So about half the people just fell off their seat. Most of my buyers don't pay cash. So what do? They use private money financing. Now, is it my private money? No, it's relationships I built. For an example, on my site, right here, Phoenix Wholesale Homes, if you go under hard money, right, it says Phoenix Wholesale Homes suggests Dan O'Brien is a local hard money lender. It's $1,000 processing fee, 18% annual interest, 6-month term, 20 to 40% down. Call Dan, right? So this is hard money. Now this is not the only guy. I got private money lenders that will lend to owner-occupant buyers for potential. So if I get an owner-occupant buyer that's looking for a property, then I can refer them to someone that can do a potential loan for them. For investor buyers, I can refer them to hard money. There's like 2 or 3 hard money sources I can refer them to, okay, that are competitive, all pretty much the same thing. But what you want to do is build a relationship with your local private money. You don't have to raise it. You don't have to do whatever. But what you can do is you can build a relationship with them, and you even can structure to where if you send them leads, you can do a split or something like that on the processing fee or whatever. However, you're gonna like a lead generation fee, depending on the state you're in and stuff like that. So no, they don't have to be cash, but you can line them up for sure for type of financing. Now, what can't you have for financing? You cannot have conventional financing or FHA financing, okay? Conventional financing is like financing through Wells Fargo or something like that. Or you can't have FHA. So the question is, why can't you have that? Is because there's a break in the chain of title, meaning you have a seller, Mr. Seller, right, who's on title, right? And you have you have a contract, and you have a buyer, right, who's applying for a conventional loan. When they pull a title report, you don't show up. So, but you're going to have a contract with the buyer. The contract's going to be you as the seller, and the buyer is the buyer. So they're going to have, say, Terry's Real Estate as the seller, and the buyer is Joe Blow, right? And the conventional banks are going to look at it and say, wait a minute, who's Terry's Real Estate, right? Well, I don't know. Terry's Real Estate has a contract on it. They're going to say no. That's called a break in the chain of title. They're going to want to see a contract directly from the seller directly to the buyer if they're going to finance it. So now you could possibly work something out, to where you could work out with the seller to work something, but then you cannot have on the HUD or the HUD-1 statement there, the closing statement, a referral fee or an assignment fee to you on that HUD. Most conventional lenders and FHA lenders won't allow that. So the rule of thumb is only sell properties to either cash buyers or cash buyers that have hard money or some sort of private financing. All right. Okay, let me see. Okay, HUD Homes, I've got 6 bids, 51 to 61% of list. HUD countered all of them at 83 to 86% of list. 3 are uninsured. All are over 60 days. 1 is over 90 days. Max bid for wholesale deal property is 70% of list. Make sure you confirm that. Do I need an inch up $100 a time, even though HUD counters with the same number every time? Good question. What happens is with HUD, right, depending on your market, I would do 2 things. 1, really verify your 70% of list. Make sure that. Now, how do you verify the 70% of list? Look for the closings on HUD properties or the cash transactions that have happened in the area on listed properties. Meaning if property is listed for $100, are they saying $70,000 is the price that it typically goes? So you really want to verify that 70% of list, because if that is not known, and if you're guessing at that number, Jamie, that could really mess you up. Okay, that's number 1. So they're counting at 83 to 86%. Now, 2 things are going to happen. 1 is they're going to have the property for a while, and that number, 2 things will happen. The list price will drop, right? Or their percentage will drop based upon 2 different things, days on market. So, let's say that 1 over 90 days, I'd be watching that one and then really pushing that one, right? And continue putting bids every single day on the property, right? And maybe you're right, inch it up like $100 until they accept it. What happens is they, if no one else is bidding on these properties, or if they're bidding even lower than you, then what's going to happen is they're going to just say, okay, okay, just get it off the books. It's going to come down to the end of the month, and they're going to have to move properties, right? Because that's how they get paid. They get a percentage based upon the closings that happen. They're going to want to move properties off the books. And something will happen to where they do it. Now, these 6 bids, so you want to bid every single day, maybe inch it up $100, but don't overpay for the property. Make sure you don't overpay. One of the biggest mistakes people can make when bidding on HUD properties is being excited just to get an accepted bid, and they actually overpay for the property. All right. Okay. Sean, is there a way to transfer ownership without going through foreclosure process? Timothy, is there a way to transfer ownership? You can deed it. You can deed it via a quit claim deed, a general warranty deed, a special warranty deed. I would always suggest go through title when you're deeding properties to make sure you have a clean title, right? And it's an insured deed. Insured means that that the title company is insuring the deed. If the deed is not insured, then what typically happens is, for an example, I can take a quit claim deed, and you can deed any house and put a notary on that and record that deed, and that will transfer ownership, okay, on a quit claim deed. A lot of title companies won't. They're going to want to see original signatures, or they're going to want to get their own deed if this deed wasn't considered insured, or it doesn't have an insurance policy from the title company, okay, insuring the deed. So they're going to want to see or have another a deed be executed from the people on that particular. So if you have as a seller is Joe Blow and a buyer as Sally Joe, whatever, they're going to want to have those people come in and re-execute a deed in front of them, because they want to make sure that this isn't fraud. Okay, so yeah, you can do that. Okay, when wholesaling via contract for deed, what sort of closing costs are involved? Standard closing costs are involved when whatever it might be. Make sure you negotiate an investor discount too when you're dealing with that, but it's literally just standard closing cost. Okay, here's from Greg. He says he's run into an obstacle where he's trying to find a title company, right? In upstate New York, they mainly use attorneys to conduct closing. That's okay. I'm currently waiting for my 3rd flip to close. Cool, congratulations. It has gone 2 months past the original closing date because the attorneys, quite frankly, are not very good at closing real estate transactions. I have interviewed at least 20 lawyers, and they have all naysayed structuring deals is subject to because of due on sales. I agree. That's why we said in here, structure it contract for deed or agreement for sale. So talk to them about that. Now, and of course they naysay that. Now, the other thing too is that the chances of a due on sale is extremely low, but it's possible, right? But when you do an agreement for sale, title doesn't transfer until the existing loan is paid off, okay? So the due on sale becomes irrelevant. And here, using land contracts because they do not protect the buyer. Of course they protect the buyer. My local RIA is a small group, maybe 10 people that think inside the box with a scarcity mindset, so I have hit a wall as well. I was referred to Clear Title America, the title company in Florida, but by an investor guru in Florida. When I spoke to them over the phone, they told me that they can and do close deals in New York State. My question is, if they do not work out, can your title company AZ close deals in New York? No. The title company here, Greg Ward in Syracuse. Okay. The title company here in Arizona will only do Arizona transactions because that's all they're licensed to do. In this particular case, there are people, okay? If anybody knows on the phone right now, and I would post maybe in the forums inside there, inside the Flip to Freedom Academy, But if anybody knows in upstate New York of a good title closing agent, please chime in here and we can refer that to Greg. In this particular case, I talked to 20 different title companies or more myself when I first started, and I ran into similar walls when it comes to that. Finding a good closing agent is probably one of the biggest challenges in this business. But once you get over that obstacle and you find that good closing agent, then life becomes a lot easier, because then now you have deals and you have someone that's working with you to close the deals. You know, it's a lot easier to get them done, because now you have confidence that you can get the deals done. So in this particular case, number one, I keep looking. Number two is it's like I said, it's you're digging. You're just gonna keep pushing. I mean, I've been wholesaling properties since 2003, and I've been through maybe 7 different title companies. I'm always it's an ongoing pursuit, looking for a really, really good closing agent. For an example, you know, I had one closing agent. She retired and she was done. So what do? I got to go find another closing agent. So I found another closing agent, and she was terrible. I mean, just ridiculous. Just everything was a hassle trying to get stuff through. You know, she could do the deals, she could do double escrows and some, you know, but she was just a mess, and everything, you know, was just hard to try to get through with her. I had to actually hire an assistant to manage the closings, to manage her so she could get them done. So then I was like, forget it. I got to find another title company. So I had another deal. I was searching for another title person that we're doing a subject to transaction on, not subject to, but agreement for sale transaction on. And I was talking to all these, and everybody said, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. It doesn't do that. And finally and every title person or closing agent, I said, listen, who do you know is the most experienced person that you've ever come across in the business? And they go, one of them said this person, Eileen Brown. And I was like, okay, how do I get a hold of her? Eileen Brown got me on the phone with her. I talked to her. She's been in the business for 30 years. I'm like, okay, can you do this? She said, yes, I can do it. She did the transaction, got it done, and she's earned my business, you know, for the past couple of years. So will there be a point when she retires? Possibly, hopefully not soon. But when she does retire, I'll have to go searching again to find another closing agent. It's part of the game, looking for it. And it's a thing where, you know, even when you find a good closing agent, I'm always continue asking, who do you know is a good agent, you know, or other people that are closing transactions, or people I'm talking to. I keep a Rolodex of people I can call just in case something happens. Okay. So, but if anybody knows anybody, please help chime in. Okay, here's a good question from Terry Beal. It says, doesn't the buyer on the agreement for sale, with the money he puts down, isn't that subtracted for the total amount he'd owe? Didn't understand that. Okay, no. So we go back to, let's go back to this scenario right here. Okay, so example, property's worth 100, seller owes 80, right? 80,000. And you're agreeing to give the seller $2,500. So technically, what is your purchase price? So Terry, it's $82,500 is your purchase price. Okay. Now on the sell side, you're going to market the property for $12,500 down, with the seller financing $80,000. So what is the sell price? Right? Sell price is $92,500. So that doesn't subtract from the purchase price. All you're doing is increasing the down payment. The loan amount stays the same. So what if you wanted to make $20,000? Right, so you'd market for, you know, $22,500. So the purchase price would be $102,500. Right. So what you're doing is increasing the purchase price when you increase the down payment. So you have a contract for 82 with terms, and the term is 80,000, right, and 2,500 down. And you're selling, now you have a contract price with a buyer for 92, of which 12,500 is down, and $80,000 is in place for the term of 5 years. Make sense? Okay, I understand all the numbers. How do you handle it when a deal falls apart? You're the glue in the middle. The seller will come to you when the buyer stops paying because that is who they made a deal with. How do you protect yourself from legal issue? Okay, first off is that when you do either an assignment, right, then you're out of the deal. You're assigning your rights away from the property to that buyer. Now, typically what I do is in this particular case, I disclose to the seller exactly what I am doing. Okay, I don't make any games or anything. I say, listen, here's the deal. I have buyers that I can line up that will find that will put the $12,000 down and they will make the payments on the property. Okay, it's not going to be me. And then you can assign your contract for the $10,500. And you can do that with a hold harmless. Okay, the title company can prepare, or you can prepare, or have an attorney prepare what's called a hold harmless agreement, to where the seller and buyer will sign a hold harmless, meaning that they will hold you harmless if there's any, say, legal issues that you're talking about. So when I typically do these, we have and the title company will prepare a standard Arizona hold harmless agreement, holding me harmless of any type of legal issues. Now, that being said, I always tell the seller, say, listen, I'm here. Here's my phone number. If something happens, call me. If there's, late payments or whatever the case may be, here's the buyer's phone number so you can contact them directly. And everything's pretty much crystal clear of exactly what's happening, so people know. So if the seller stops making, or the buyer stops making payments, they can call the buyer directly, right? Or if they can't go to hold the buyer, they would call me, right? And then I could call the buyer or try to get involved. And if there's a default situation, I tell the seller, say, listen, if there's a default situation, get me involved, call me, and then I can help deal with the buyer. And then guess what? If you get the property back, I'll turn around. I can line up another buyer for the property and can get another $2,500. So I keep involved in the property. I recently had a property I sold like 2 or 3 years ago where the buyer missed a payment or was late on a payment by like 4 or 5 days. Well, I called that buyer up. And I said, hey, what's going on? And he goes, oh, sorry, I was out of town. I just got back. I'll make the payment. Everything's good. Now, if he defaulted on that, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine. I'd tell the seller, listen, don't worry. If there's a problem, I'll be able to talk to the seller. And, if I have to find another buyer to basically take this over, then I will. And I could turn around, negotiate. We already negotiated the same deal. We'll get you another $2,500. I can make another $10,000 on the deal or more on it. So protect yourself legally, hold harmless, right? Number one. And number two, just disclose exactly what's happening through the entire transaction and assign your contract. How do you handle seller financing if the home needs repairs like a bathroom reinstall? Okay, 2 questions. This is from RJ Wilson. How do you handle seller financing if the property has equity in the property, then you can justify selling the property to an investor that might hold on to it for for like a buy and hold in particular case. Or when you're selling it, you have to make it more sellable. So meaning either it has to be a lower down payment or it has to be a longer on terms, and just let people know. Say, listen, we're selling this right now. We're doing, instead of $20,000 down, we're doing $7,000 down, right? And instead of the seller getting $2,500, maybe the seller now gets $1,000 because, listen, we got to put in a whole new bathroom here. So you kind of want to structure it, and what makes these deals more sellable is, number one, equity makes it more sellable. The length of the loan makes it more sellable. The minimal of the down payment makes it more sellable. So if you have a property that's in distress like this and it needs stuff, then you want to make it to where it becomes more sellable through either increasing the term, reducing the down, or stuff like that. And question number 2: if you structure seller financing, will the seller be able to purchase another property with this one still in the credit? It depends. They're going to have to qualify. Okay, they'll have to qualify having 2 mortgages on the credit. So that's if you're talking to a seller and the seller says, hey, in next 5 years I want to buy another house, then you say, listen, well, guess what? You're going to have to qualify for both mortgages, because this mortgage is still going to be on your credit. So if that's the case, Mr. Seller, we either got to reduce the amount of years, right, which is potentially reduce the amount of cash, which is going to limit my ability to find an end user buyer for the property, or two, you can postpone buying the property for a certain time down the road. But that's a good question. What's a good kickback? And I don't like the words kickback, but what's a good, say, referral fee for a realtor who gives you leads and turns deals? Well, depending on it, maybe give them, if it's a deal that you close, maybe $500 for if it's a good deal that you close, or 5% of the profit, whichever is greater. So, okay. This is Mike. I'm sending out a mailer to free and clear / high equity homeowners. What is the most common deal structure I would most likely encounter needed to be prepared to do? This one right here. So you've got free and clear and high equity. So you got free and clear and high equity. This is going to be your deal structure, properties with equity. So what you're going to do here in this particular case is you're going to assume that most of the properties have equity. But obviously you're always going to ask, hey, listen, do you have any liens or judgments or any mortgages on the property? And they're going to say no. I own it free and clear. So you're going to look to contract at 70% of ARV, 70% of ARV. So how do you figure out ARV? You can figure out ARV by finding 3 closest closed comparable properties within a 1 mile radius of the subject that's like property. Okay, find 3. This is what an appraiser will do. An appraiser will find 3 comparable closed properties, right, that are within 1 mile of the subject that's like, meaning single story for single story, 2-story for 2-story, and then they'll do adjustments for pools and lot sizes, and adjustments for maybe interior remodels and stuff like that. So what you want to do is find 3 comparable. That's how you figure out what's ARV. Now, this market is a little different, okay? Because a lot of the bank-owned properties are selling to buyers. So if you look at ARV and you're looking at 3 closed properties and they're all at 40, 50, 60,000, then you have an anomaly of something that's 110,000. You got to actually go in and look at the pictures. If that 110,000 is all fixed up and it has granite countertops and new appliances and it's all nice and clean, well, guess what? And that property is sold, that becomes your ARV number. Right, that becomes your number. It can't be the 70s and 80,000, because those are trashed properties. So what you're looking for are properties that have been fixed up, that have been remodeled, with key terms of renovated, remodeled, like new, brand new, that whatever. You're looking for properties that have been renovated as properties. That's after repair value. So you want to find properties that after repair. And it's better to have them closed properties. So then when you're marketing the property to a buyer, you can say, listen, so and so address, XYZ, 7th Street, just sold for 110,000. It was fully renovated, granite countertops, new cabinets, stainless steel appliances. Looks like they put a new AC on there, and it's $110,000. Well, I'm selling mine for $62,000, and it needs about $20,000 worth of work. There's money to be made there. Okay. All right, what else? Ooh, cool. Matt T. I got a deal under contract, 3-bed, 1-bath, 1,300 square foot house, ARV 100, in an area near bad part of town, but the actual neighborhood it's on seems okay. It doesn't need a lot of repairs. I'm having a difficult time moving it, trying to sell it for $48,900. Okay. One thing, it's a 1-bath, but that's okay. At that price, you should be able to move it. I posted it on Postlets, Craigslist, email blast. My buyers have a few people call, but most are tire kickers, time wasters. I plan on pulling the cash transactions. How can I move this deal quickly without driving back and forth and wasting time with tire kickers. Okay, there's always going to be tire kickers. That's just part of the deal. Okay, so in this particular case, number one is I blanket the entire neighborhood with bandit signs, right? Blanket the entire neighborhood. Now if you got a seller, and they're living in the property, don't put a bandit sign in front of the house. But you can blanket the entire neighborhood with bandit signs. Make sure you put on major traffic corners right there. Number two, right? Have a realtor pull all the cash transactions within a 1 to 3 mile radius, and get a list of the name of all the selling realtors. Each property has closed in the MLS has a listing agent and a selling agent. You want to get the selling agent's name or email or whatever, or phone number, and call them up and say, hey, I got a property that's off market. It's priced at $48,900, and it's ready to go. I can sell it, and it's worth about $100. Do you have any interested buyers? Now, typically other agents, selling agents that have sold properties cash will have either those buyers in their pocket, and then they might be looking to buy other properties. At least you can get some offers coming. So that'd be the first thing I do, other than emailing. First, it hits my website. We do an email blast. I post it on Facebook. If it doesn't sell after that, then I would go to the extremes of putting out bandit signs and obviously putting on Craigslist and stuff like that, putting out bandit signs, and then and finding all the local, in a 1 to 3 mile radius, of all the selling agents that have sold properties cash in that area. So that's what I do. Okay. Okay, Brandon says, Sean, thanks for all your info and insight. I have a contract, and I'm having a hard time finding escrow company that will do an assignment or double escrow due to legal fears. It's a search, and I talked about it earlier. It's a search. You've got to dig for it. You've got to the first thing I would do, and I wish I could make a title company that would do national, closings, that would do double escrows or whatever. Now, earlier, Greg Ward talked about Clear Title America. So Brandon, try to call Clear Title America and see if they'll do a closing in your particular area. Number one, Clear Title America, which I haven't talked to. I don't have any reference. I can't give you a high recommendation because I've never used them. But when it comes to finding a good one, is go to local real estate investment clubs. Talk to the club president, club owner, talk to other wholesalers in the area, and ask them for any good closing agents. They might have, like you said, a scarcity mentality, but you'll find someone that you can talk to. It just keeps digging, and just keep asking and referring. But you got that contract, so right now you've got to hustle. You'd be on the phone. I'd be on the phone book and be talking to real estate investment clubs. Anybody there I could talk to, but I'd be digging through the phone book and calling to see if anybody. And you're asking for you're not saying, hey, can you do this to the person that answers the phone. You're just saying, listen, who's the most experienced escrow officer in your office? Number one, and how long have they been a closing agent or an escrow officer? And if they go, well, my most experienced person is Jody, and she's been a closing agent for 2 years, you need to find somebody else. You're looking for someone that says, oh, yeah, our closing agent's Sally, and she's been doing it for, 22 years. That's the person that you want to go in and talk to. Say, great, can I talk to her? Get her on the phone and say, listen, is there a good time we can meet? And try to meet her ASAP so you can sit down, show her the contract, show her what you want to do. And someone with that type of experience should be able to get the deal done for you. What's this one? All right. Mike, okay. Also, sending out mail to absentees, 1,000 yellow letters cost $1,200, while 1,000 postcards cost $400. So I can mail absentee 3 times for the cost of the mail using Send a postcard. Send the postcard. You know, what I've been doing is yell letters work great, but if you're on a limited budget, send postcards. You're going to get less calls, right, on the deals, but you're going to get more motivated calls, meaning you'll have more of a you'll have someone that wants to sell their property that wants to do it. Now, when we talked about doing these different type of deals, is that the yellow letter you'll get. If you send 1,000, you could get anywhere from 80 to 100 calls. A lot of people will be curious, but you could turn those into potential deals, because if someone's calling and they're curious and they want to know, and you say, "Hey, listen, you have a house for sale?" and they go, "Well, actually, we've been thinking about it." There might not be a high motivation there, but you could potentially structure something, out of that deal if you can talk to them and build a rapport. But in this particular case, Mike, I would send I'd send the postcards to those people. Richard says, does a contract for deed violate the due on sale clause? No, because the title does not transfer until the contract for the deed is met in full. Okay, Richard asked the question, said, you said when I hold the house, I use agreement for sale or contract for deed. I don't get that. Isn't that a simple transaction where you don't hold it? Two different things. And sometimes I speak fast, so I do apologize for speaking too fast. All right, Richard. So leads come in. I am building my own personal portfolio of properties. Okay. So when a lead comes in, if it meets my criteria where I can get $500 a month cash flow, the property's in fairly good condition, they have a good loan in place, meaning it's a 30-year fixed at a good interest rate, and I have a motivated seller, I will make a decision to either hold that property for my own inventory, or I will sell the property, right? Wholesale the property out to another investor. Okay. So on agreement for sales or contract for deeds, I structure a property that I'm going to flip with agreement for sales or contract for deeds. I structure a deal that I'm going to buy and hold myself with subject to. Because me personally, I am willing to take the risk of the due on sale clause because I'm the one that's buying it. And what's the worst case scenario that happens on a due on sale? It basically what they say is you have 30, 60, 90, whatever days they give you to pay off the loan. For me, that'd be no big issue. Good question. Johnny Cidello asked, is the agreement for sale / contract for deed the same as a lease option? No. It's not. A lease option, right? A lease option is exactly what it says. You have a lease, and what's a lease? A lease is a rental agreement. It's a rent to own. So it's a lease with a monthly rental payment with an option to purchase. So you typically, on a lease option, you have two documents. You have one, a lease or a rental agreement, and two, you have a purchase contract with a date. And on that purchase contract, right, those are both tied together, meaning that if the attached lease agreement is in breach, the purchase contract becomes null and void. So is it the same thing? No. That is number one. That's a lease agreement and a lease own, rent to own. Now, that only gives you equity interest via the contract. Agreement for sale, right, or contract for deed, that is when now that's a recordable instrument, meaning it's recorded, and now that you can actually write off interest payments on your taxes in this particular scenario. It's a higher level of interest in a property / ownership than a lease option. And obviously the next best is obviously deeded ownership. Good question, Maria. It says, when you talk to a seller, do you understand upfront that you are a wholesaler and that you will be flipping the property? Okay, two different things. If the property is an equity deal, right? This is how I position in myself when I'm structuring the particular deal. First off, I'm negotiating with the seller, and I'm going to tell him, say, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do with the property. Okay, I'm an investor, and I'm here to make a profit. So that is the number one overall thing that the seller must understand. Okay, so listen, Mr. Seller. Obviously I'm an investor, and I'm here to make a profit on the property, of course. Either the profit will be, sooner or later, who knows, depending on the market, yada, 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 right? But as of right now, I don't know what I'm going to do with the property. I could either assign it, I could sell it, I could rent it, I could fix it, I could flip it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do, Mr. Seller. But the bottom line is you're going to get X dollars at X time of closing. Is that understood? And they're going to say, yeah, okay, yeah, that's understood. So I'm going to basically tell them, I don't know what I'm doing with the property yet. So if I assign it, okay, because sellers don't know what a wholesaler is. If you walk in and say, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm a wholesaler. I'm going to be flipping this property. Right? They might not know what a wholesaler is. They might not even know what flipping the property is. But if you say, listen, Mr. Seller, I might assign it. I might sell the property. I might rent the property. I might fix it. I might fix it and flip it and sell it. I might buy and keep it as a rental and buy and hold it. I don't know what I'm going to do with the property, but all the bottom line is that you're going to get your price. And my goal is obviously, hopefully someday down the road, I'll take the risk on it to potentially make a profit. Okay? So in that case, it pretty much covers all angles depending on what you want to do. Now, when it comes to these type of deals, right, we're talking about seller financing and structuring, I'll tell them. I'll be, listen, this is what I do. I'm not going to live in your property, Mr. Seller. I'm not representing I'm going to live in your property, Mr. Seller. But what I'm going to do is I have people that I work with that are looking for properties just like this, right, that have, either they can make payments on the property, and they can come in and take over the property, and I'll put the whole entire thing together, right, and structure it to where they'll make payments to the mortgage company or make payments to the title company make payments to the mortgage company. There'll be an audited statement every single month, and if there's a default situation, then I would step in and try to help out in the situation. Okay. Okay, Bernie. Property is in a negative equity, and you want to do number 4. Property is upside down. How do you get the seller to move into rented if they are unemployed and benefits but still have title to the property? They may lose their benefits if they move out deliberately in order to get rid of the property, but may lose state benefit. I don't even know what you're talking about. How do they lose state benefit? How do you get around the issue and complete the sale without making this? Well, here's the deal. If the property is upside down, right? I mean, it's in the seller wants to sell, it's their responsibility to figure out where they're going to go, right? You're not going to force them to sell the property with no equity, right? I mean, if a seller contacts you and say, hey, listen, yeah, I definitely want to sell a house. It's worth $130,000. I owe $100,000 and I'm going to sell. Well, they got to figure out where they're going, and they got to figure out their situation and their employment benefits and all that type of stuff. That's on them. If they want to sell, that's the decision process they're going to have to go through to decide if they want to sell or not sell. Okay. It's up to them. I mean, how do you, it's not your responsibility to figure out how to complete the sale without making them homeless. You know what I mean? It's their responsibility that if they're going to sign the documents and they're going to sell their house, they got to figure out where they're going, right? So I would ask them. I'd say, listen, Mr. Seller, when the property is sold, where are you going to go? And they go, well, I don't know where I'm going to go. Well, I think you better figure out trying how to keep this property, before you, start doing it, and then maybe recommend that they stay in the house. You know what I mean? If they're going to be homeless by selling the house, then either two things are happening. One, they don't have enough income to pay for the house. It might be in foreclosure and they're going to lose it anyways. And they need other help that, they need, financial help, maybe a bankruptcy or something like that, that you don't recommend or whatever, so interesting question. Do you recommend staying out of war zone when wholesaling? Well, Matt, let me see. 18, 20. In the past 3 weeks, this is just on war zone properties. 30. In the past 3 weeks, I've made $68,000 on war zone properties. So would I live there? Heck no. The lady I went to and met yesterday, war zone property, right? So the question becomes, is there a demand in the war zone properties? In Phoenix, there's a high demand for cheap properties, and the cheaper properties are typical in the war zone areas, right? So the question becomes, what I would do is, Matt, is I would go, okay, pull the war zone areas and in your MLS, and have a realtor do this for you if you don't have a license, right? And go in there and say, okay, how many cash transactions have happened in this war zone area, right? And if there's a lot of cash transactions that happened, then guess what? Maybe you want to send a letter, a blanket letter, to everybody in the war zone to try to find someone who wants to sell that you could potentially do deals in, right? That hasn't transferred titles since 98 or 99 or 2000 or something. So they have a room to build in equity in there. So that's the question. So anytime you're looking at an area, right, and you're going, the first question would be is, what's going on in the area? How many cash? If you pull all the cash transactions, and there's a ton of cash transactions in the war zone area, do the war zone area. Why not? Fernando C. All right, Fernando, I have my first property under contract. Seller owes $80K and is behind 4 payments. Okay. Seller owes $80K behind on 4 payments. I offered seller $2K cash, and I will cure the late payments $5,000. So you're in it for $7,000. Purchase price $87,000. So I'm into the property for $87,000. As is value is $110,000. Should I sell it for $97,000 with $17K down, or so I can make $10K, or should I sell it for $107,000 with $27K down? Okay. My first question would be, and on all properties, is what's the demand for your area? If there's a ton of inventory in the particular half-mile subdivision to a half-mile to a mile rate, if there's a lot of inventory available, right, then you want to price it a little bit more aggressive to sell. If there's little inventory available, then price it aggressive as meaning maybe try to make $10,000 on it. If there's not a lot of inventory, Fernando, in their particular area where there's not a lot of properties for sale, then push the price to your $27K down. Now, here's the deal. When it comes to wholesaling, right, it's easier. It's not easier. It's when you're pricing a property to sell it, it's better to price it a little bit higher because you always can come down. But if you price it low, it's very difficult to come back up. Or you can't even. I've never had a property where I said, okay, I'm going to price it for 100 and 107 or 100,000 or whatever it is, 97,000, and then now I think I'm going to price it for 103. I've never done it that way. It's more done where I'll price it for the 107 and I put it out there, and then I can negotiate down and give a smoking deal to a buyer for say 102,000. You know what I mean? And you can negotiate from there. So 2 things will dictate that. Number 1 is the velocity that properties are selling in your market. What's going on in your current market? and the available inventory of properties that a buyer could purchase in that particular area. If there is low inventory, there's not a lot of properties available. Me personally, I price it 107, 27K down. If there's very tons of inventory, then you want to sell it to where it's where it's you're pricing it for maybe 97, 17K down to make that 10 grand. Good question though. Nancy asks this question: is this 4-deal structuring fit for all seller houses? What's the caveat? The caveat is they got to be motivated, right? If someone's going to sell the property that has equity, they're going to have to be able to sell it at a price at 70% less repairs, right? If someone's going to sell the property that has some equity in the property and they're going to keep the loan in place, right? They're going to be motivated enough to be able. They need to want to get rid of the property so they can. They're willing to leave the loan in place and they're willing to overcome the objections of any default situation. What happens after 5 years and stuff like that. So the underlying I guess fit or for this technique to work is there has to be motivation in the seller. If there's motivation in the seller, then this becomes very easy to do. Taj asks, what's up, Taj? How's it going? Are you finding that HUD counter is their max allowance bid, meaning they probably won't take anything less until they lower the price again? No, I've got counters on properties and I just bid what I'm going to bid, maybe increase it $100 or whatever, and then get it accepted. There's a science behind it. Remember, there's computers and then there's people that control the computers behind it. So if you have a property that you're tracking, continue bidding on it and maybe just increase it a little bit. And to the surprise, you might get accepted because something might come up. They might get a word from their HUD manager, say, okay, listen, we got to get rid of these properties. This property's been on the books too long. Just get rid of it. And you happen to be there. That's why you want to bid every day. Okay, when doing a double closing, how do you assure that the buyer and seller did not see your profits? Okay, good question, Tyson. Number one is that when you do, right, you're going to have the seller. So let's talk about, you have an A to B. The A is the seller, the B is you. That is one escrow, one transaction. On that A to B, there's going to be a closing statement. And it's going to be what you're buying it for and what the seller is selling it for with closing costs and statements and all that type of stuff. That's the A to B. So that's going to be your price of what you're selling it for. Your price of what you're buying it for the A to B. Okay? So that's going to be one price. And then there's going to be the B to C, which is escrow number 2. Now, escrow number 2, the C end buyer, right? He is not a party to the A to B, meaning he's not going to see your escrow between your A to B because he's not even a party to that transaction. It's a complete different escrow. He's only a party to the B to C. What's your B to C, what you're buying and what you're selling it for. Now, on your B to C, right? If your title company are going to do 2 different ways. Number one, they're going to just put, here's what you're buying it for, here's how much money you wire, and that's it. Or a title company will take your purchase price and your sell price, and there will be a profit on there. It'll be cash to seller is what it'll be called. Now, the B2C, right, the C buyer, he doesn't know if you bought that property or what you came in out of pocket money with it or whatever. He doesn't know anything about the B2C transaction because he's not party unless you do an assignment, but you're asking about double escrow. So in this case, it'll be cash to seller, and that will be your profit, which will be visible to your C buyer. depending on how your title company structures the HUDs. In my particular case, the title company only basically tells them what they're coming in with, right? What they're purchasing it for, what they have to come in with, and what their purchase price is. Okay, this is from Tom. It says, I'm planning on becoming a realtor. Will this system work well if I must disclose it? Heck yeah. Or work better if I do not get a realtor's license? No. I don't have a realtor's license because I don't want to have to deal with brokers and all the paperwork and all that type of stuff that's doing that. My wife is a realtor. If my wife wasn't a realtor, then I would probably become a realtor, okay? Or I'd hire, when my wife wasn't a realtor, we hired a realtor. We hired a realtor that was part of our staff, and she was a realtor she was our assistant and / realtor. So, if you're not married to a realtor, you're not going to hire a realtor, then you can become a realtor. You don't have to do it. But will it work better? Well, first off, the benefits of becoming a realtor is, number one, you're going to have access to MLS, which you can pull cash transactions, right? If you have a property and a lead that comes in, here I said there's 4 ways to make money on a property. As a realtor, number 5, you could always list the property, right? And yes, you do have to disclose you're a realtor, and all you got to say is, listen, I'm not representing you. I'm an investor in this particular situation. I'm not representing you for any type of representation. I'm an investor at my own, investing and buying the property on myself. Now, with a realtor, you're going to have to get the exact verbiage that your broker requires you to put on the contract for an appropriate disclosure. So make sure you understand that before you contract with a seller, so you get the appropriate disclosures. Now, like I said in the beginning, is the underlying thing is you have a motivated seller, right? When you have a motivated seller, they don't care. They want to get rid of the property. Whether you're a realtor or not a realtor, as long as you have your proper disclosures in there that your broker wants you to have in there, then literally the seller doesn't care. They just want to get rid of the property in the fastest means possible. Okay, so so that's obviously best. So I would continue going that way. Okay, so Elizabeth, on the lease option, when they ask how we get paid, how do you respond? Who's they, right? When they ask, who's they? Is it they the buyer? Is they the seller? Who's they? So let's assume they is the buyer. The seller. How do they get paid? On a lease option, when they ask how we get paid, how do you respond? Actually, you know what? Can you, Elizabeth, sorry about that. Can you just clarify your question, please? Okay. Okay, here's from one. I overpaid for a HUD property. Next Thursday is the last day to close on my contract will expire. I have a sure buyer still marketing. I don't have a sure buyer still marketing for this house here in Atlanta, Georgia. But if I don't have the buyer, what happens then? I lose EMD. How can I get out of this HUD contract? Okay. First rule of thumb when it comes to HUD, never overbid on a HUD property, right? You got to make sure now, for me, here's the deal. I'll take a little bit more risk on a HUD property because I dropped thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on marketing. I just dropped $10,000 on a billboard signs. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that could have been 10 HUD properties. So for me, I take a risk on it where I'll drop the $1,000 or $500, whatever, and I'll take the risk. If I sell it, great. If I don't, oh well. I've been lucky enough to where I make sure I get the right price. So I'm not gonna be stupid and ridiculously overpay for it, but I want to make sure I can turn around and sell it. But I'm willing to take the risk. In this particular case, Joan, is it June or Joan? In this particular case, you get 2 different options. Number 1, right? You can cancel the contract on your closing date, right? And you'll lose your EMD, okay, your earnest money deposit, and call it a learning experience. Or number 2 is if you feel that you can find a buyer for the property, then you can do an extension, a 15-day or whatever per your state, an extension. They're going to ask for an extension fee, depending on the price of the property. Like here in Phoenix, is $375. We'll buy you another 15 days. So if I feel like that I need more time on the property and I feel like I potentially have a better deal, then I would, or if I need to push it harder or put bandit signs out or do whatever the case may be, I need to, I would need to, in that particular case, get an extension on the property. So you got till next Thursday. Now, first question you got to ask yourself, have you given 110% marketing this property and getting it out to everybody you possibly can? It's like, have you turned over every stone to get this sucker sold? Have you talked to all the cash buyer realtors, cash agents who sold properties in that particular area? Have you talked to all of them? Have you put bandit signs out? Have you put it on Craigslist every single day? Have you put it on postlets out there? Have you, talked to people on your email list of your potential buyers? Have you done that? Have you presented it to real estate investment clubs? Have you, put it in the newspaper as a property for sale? It's no holds barred. Pretty much is you gotta push it. You know what I mean? If you get a smoking deal, this business is easy. You stick it out, you can sell it very quickly. If you got a marginal deal, it's going to take effort, and it's going to take some serious effort where you got to do those extra things to get the property sold. Patrick Kane said, Sean, not sure if I missed out on these deals with little or no equity. Are you putting under contract via option while you find your buyer on how to putting it under contract? Or are you putting it under contract and just escape clause if you cannot find a buyer and agreement for sale? With these particular properties with little or no equity, I'm putting them under contract with a clause in there. The contract is subject to buyer finding end buyer. Okay, contract subject to buyer finding end buyer. And now the seller knows, hey, listen, I'm not going to live in the property. I'm not buying it, going to live in the property unless the property has potential equity, right? If the property has some equity like this, then I'm going to say, listen, I don't know if I'm going to buy it. I don't know if I'm going to sell it. I don't know if I'm going to find an end buyer. I don't know if I'm going to hold on to it from my own portfolio. I haven't really done the numbers yet. All I know is you're going to get $2,500 cash at closing, and we're going to leave the loan in place for 5 years. Now, if it has property has little no equity, I tell the seller, say, listen, I'm not going to live in the property, okay? I live in the property. I have my own property on the other side of town. It doesn't make sense for an investment property because there's no equity. I can find better deals in the market. But, Mr. Seller, I know and have marketed to people that are looking for deal structures just like this, okay? What I'll do is I'm going to talk to them, and I'm going to, I am going to line up a buyer for this property, and you'll get your $1,000 at closing, and we'll keep the loan in place for 5 to 10 years, whatever it might be. So just let them know what you're doing. And like I said, if there is motivation, there will be no resistance. If there's no if there is no motivation, you'll get resistance. Okay, so the determining factor is you got to have that motivation. Okay, this is from Rick Jordan, and he came across a website called HUDHomeTracker.com. The website tracks, collects, and presents HUD home bidding info. Cool. So I'll copy that. Let's check it out. Thanks for this, Rick. Pretty cool. HUD Home Tracker. So location, size, status on market. So this is tracker. Is it off market? No bid record. Bid record. Okay. So let me take a property from sold inventory. I just sold this property. Now this was an interesting property. because I sold this property. Software update. Oh man, cancel. Okay, so this is a HUD home. I just sold the property. Now this thing was listed for $50 something thousand, and they called me back, and I got the winning bid and called me back and said there's $18,000, $19,000 loan on it. Right, so here, and I did the deal anyways. Sold it. Size, price, off market, on market. I wonder if they'll just. Do you have to put all this stuff in or what? Location, or maybe just put. So it looks like they're just pulling the bids. They're pulling. I don't know, unless HUD house bid statistics, search houses, list all, blah, blah, state, search for case number, blah. They're just pulling stuff from the site and then just blowing it out. So I don't know if this is a lot of value here. Unless they give statistics, location, Phoenix. Let's see if they're expected bid amounts: 118%, 10 days, 30 days, 60 days. I don't understand lease square footage regression. Here's some information. 13%. This is off. I'll tell you that right now. But this is pretty good though right here. It gives initial list price, final asking price, sold at 95.5%, sold at 89. And this shows days on market. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. This is good right here. This information right here, bid house statistics. This is good. Cool. All right, here's the URL for everybody. Oops, that's the other house I just sold. All right, here's your bid house statistics. Copy. Oops. Okay, this thing's freaking out. Okay. All right, there it is. All right. Where was that? This is from Richard. Are closing costs in wholesale paid by M buyer or by you? Closing costs are paid by end buyer, and closing cost on your A to B is paid by you. You can negotiate to split it if you want. Your closing cost in your B to C is paid by your end buyer. Do you pay for your title searches as soon as you get the subject house under contract, or is it standard that you get and taken care of upfront fee when you're title people? I don't pay for any. I don't pay. You guys shouldn't be paying for title reports. If they're charging for title reports, then I've never paid for a title report ever. A title report comes along with the business, and I would be like, listen, I've got 100 title companies I can go to. You know, I'm going to give you my business. It's just part of the, you don't pay for title reports. I wouldn't pay for them. Can you do an agreement for sale with house with 2 mortgages, 30-year fixed, different payments and different interest rate? Yes, you can. You can do 2 different things. You can wrap them both, or you can wrap them all in a singular one with a blended rate, as long as the total monthly payments are covered, and then the servicing company will make payments. Right? They'll make payments to each loan. So what is a blended rate? Well, if you get, I'm not a mathematician, but if you got one at 10%, you got one at 7%, then what they'll do is they'll blend that rate and call it, say, 8.7%. And as long as those payments are covered in those different payments. So if the payment on the first is 700, the payment on the second is 500, then as long as you're collecting $1,200 in payments, they could wrap both loans for a blended rate for a term of X years, if that makes sense. This is good from Mike Metchler. Title company for Greg. Try posting on Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets is a big forum out there, and you can post on there, and sometimes someone might respond with a good title company. This is from Bernie Armstrong. Is a closing agent the same thing as a solicitor or lawyer in the UK? Holy cow, I have no idea. I've never flipped a property in the UK. So I am not the guy you want to talk to, but that's interesting. I'll try to find out for you. I have a friend of mine who he doesn't flip in UK, but he flips in other countries, and I'll ask him. Okay, right. Can you advise someone that they should be motivated to act because of the described to by painting a picture of what could possibly happen if they don't act? I don't like to scare people, but sometimes in the course of sticking their head in the sand and waiting for the night with white horse to save them, they cannot objectively see where they are heading. Okay. This is what's called, what I do is you give people, because here's the deal. There are some people that have a hard time in making decisions. And if they have a hard time making decisions, you have to assume the sale. Okay, what does assume the sale mean? Is that what you do is you give them choices. And the choices that they pick will lead them down the path you want them to go. Okay, so choice A would be choice B, choice C, and choice D. In this particular situation with seller financing, let's say they have minimal to little equity or whatever the case may be. Choice A would be, Mr. Seller, we've got a couple different options of paths you could go down with this property. Number one is, you owe $100,000, and the house is worth $100,000, and you owe, say, $90,000. Number one, you could try to list it with a real estate agent, right? Offers are coming in right now about 95% of list price, right? And you're going to have to pay closing costs, attorney fees. Closing costs. On your side, you're going to have to pay real estate commissions of say 6%. You're going to have a reduced offer price, and you're probably, you're going to net out of the thing, Mr. Seller. You're probably going to net out of the thing, say maybe $85,000 roughly. So in scenario B, are you willing to, and it might take 6 months to sell, who knows? Are you willing to come out of pocket on the property for say $5,000 to $7,000 to $10,000? Okay, that's option one. And they're going to say yes or no. Now, remember, there's motivation there. Most of the time, they're going to say, no way. I'm not coming out of pocket to sell this thing. Okay, so that's option A. Option B then now is that, okay, Mr. Seller, you owe $100, it's $90. If you don't want to come out of pocket, the other alternative is you could rent the property. Now, I know you're moving out of state and you've got a job out there and you have to move and stuff, and I know you can't afford both mortgages, Mr. Seller, but you could rent the property from afar, right? And obviously, if the renter doesn't pay, then you're going to have to be making the mortgage payments and this, that, and the other. Have you considered renting the property? And what you'll find is that they're going to go, oh, no, I don't want to deal with a rental property. I don't want to have to deal with a headache of collecting rents and dealing with a tenant. No, I don't want to deal with that. So, okay, that's option B. Okay, well, option C, Mr. Seller, is if you don't want to come out of pocket, you don't want to rent it, and you don't have the money to pay the mortgage, you could let it go back to the bank. Now, obviously, Mr. Seller, I don't suggest this, but you could essentially do that. Now, it's going to ruin your credit, and stuff like that. I definitely don't want to let it go to the bank. I don't want to, there's no way I don't want to let it go to the bank. Okay, Mr. Seller, well, we also have the option of where we could leave your existing $90,000 loan in place, right? We could do it for 5 years, and we could possibly get you, say, $2,500 or $1,000 cash for, say, some moving or whatever, So would that be of interest to you, Mr. Seller, if we could structure something like that? And they're going to say, oh, yeah, that'd be great. So now they didn't want A, they didn't want to come out of pocket, they didn't want to rent the property, they didn't want to get it back to the bank, so you come out with a solution D, which is, oh my gosh, we can leave the loan in place for 5 years, and I'll give you $1,000 cash at closing without show of interest. Oh my gosh, that'd be great. Okay, great. Let's write it up. So you start writing up the contract, and you say, here, sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, right? Assume the sale. So they picked what they wanted. They didn't want these other ones right there. And you kind of know they don't want the other ones right there because you're building rapport and kind of talking them through while you're looking at the house and stuff. But what they do is they picked the option. You didn't tell them which one you wanted. They picked it. So now you just say, okay, let's write it up. Does that make sense? When you renegotiate with a seller, do you have to start a new contract? No, you just do an addendum to the contract. Have you had problems disclosing the whole transaction, the agreement for sale? What is your experience when the seller finds out they make $10,000 on the property and make $2,000? It's part of the agreement. I mean, that's part of the agreement. That I haven't had anybody freak out or blow up or go, oh my gosh, they're making that. They typically hasn't done that. In that typical situation, most times they'll see like an assignment fee on there for $10,000. But I haven't had anybody freak out or blow up or anything like that because of that. So, because we're at closing table, we're getting the deal done. Like I said, there has to be an underlying motivation there. If there's underlying motivation, they're going to want to get rid of the property. And you found someone that now has skin in the game and that's how I explain it. So, listen, the guy's got skin in the game. Obviously, if we want to get enough of a down payment to be able to make sure he's committed to the property, so he doesn't default on it. And this is back to Rick's question. Is it ethical, in your opinion, to try to convince them that they should be motivated? Okay. It's like this. Is that, how can I explain it? It's like, it's like a cat is a cat, right? You can't convince a cat to be a dog. A cat is a cat. Okay? So you're asking me, is it ethical to convince the cat to be a dog? No, you can't do it. Either a cat is a cat and a dog is a dog, right? If it's a cat, there's motivation. If it's a dog, there's no motivation. You can't convince a dog to be a cat, and you can't convince a cat to be a dog, okay? Either they're motivated or they're not. Right? You give them choices, just like we talked about, A, B, C, D, right? But if there's not motivation there, then forget it. Next. I'm just long-winded anyway, so that's the way it is. All right. Hi, Sean. This is from Anthony. It says, I have an appointment with a seller in Beverly Wood area, Los Angeles. He's asking $1.15 million for a 3-3 completely upgraded house. If I were going to wholesale it, what should he be offering? The comps in the area in asking price range, and he's not asking too much. He owes $400,000 on a fixed loan, Anthony. Okay. First off, is the guy motivated? It sounds like it's a completely upgraded house. He's asking 1.15, right? In the LA area, he's asking 1.5 completely upgraded house. If I were going to wholesale it, what should I be offering? Okay. Well, first off, you got to think about who's your buyer, right? Who's your buyer? So if your buyer, right, is a fix and flip buyer, then you have to be at 70% less repairs, whatever, and get the sucker sold, right? If your buyer is an end user buyer, but remember, you can't use conventional financing. It has to be a cash buyer. So I would look at what are the cash transactions going for within a 1 mile radius of a similar type 3-bed, 3-bath, completely upgraded house. If the cash transactions are going for $900,000, then I'd be negotiating in the $700,000, maybe $800,000 range. If I've had similar cash transactions at $900,000, and I'd make sure I definitely have an out clause that it is subject to you finding an M buyer. That, listen, I'm not the one, I'm not the one going to be purchasing the house. So you want to find out what are other properties selling cash for, and how many days on market were they? Were they 2 days on market and they sold for $900 cash and it sold quickly? Or was it, 250 days on market and it sold for $900 cash? That's a big difference. So try to find 2 or 3 properties that have sold cash in either the subdivision, a 1/4 mile radius, or 1 mile radius, right? And figure out how many days on market. Now, if you do have a property that sold 900 days on market and it's 250 days, then guess what? You're going to have to be in the, 750, 800 range for the property, and you're going to have to negotiate something less than that for your profit. And on a fixed loan, on that particular case, it's motivation. I mean, the guy might just want to dump it. I don't think if he's asking 1.5 that he wants to dump it. I think that he's asking 1.5 because I personally don't think there's a motivation there. But it does not hurt to make a cash offer, right? And like I said, your cash offer is going to be dependent upon what other properties have sold cash and how quickly they've sold. This is from Memphis Mike. I know you say it's all about sales. You can present a deal. And this was a while ago. This was 45 minutes ago. So I probably already explained that when it talks about selling a property to a buyer. Why don't you keep more properties rather than wholesaling most ones you find? Because my business model is quick turn, right? Quick turn properties. I could keep them, fix them, and flip them. But and I've done tons and tons of fix and flips, but there is so much time involved when it comes to fix and flips, of managing contractors, writing lists of everything that needs to be done, visiting the property every single day. My system right now, especially I'm running, Flip to Freedom Academy. I'm doing the podcast and stuff like that, and, live training events, and then doing my real estate business. For me, I can get a property under contract. I can stick it on my website and sell it. I can talk to buyers and stuff. And it's a pretty much well-oiled system where I don't have to be visiting properties. I could easily switch the model and just do fix and flip, but then I definitely couldn't be running the Flip to Freedom Academy, doing podcasts or anything like that, because I'd be a sole focus on, fixing and flipping, 4 or 5 properties a month or whatever. What is the quickest way to find a quality retail buyer with a large down payment for agreement for sales? I would put the ad in the local newspaper, right? I would put it definitely on Craigslist, and I'd be talking to all the realtors that have sold properties within a 1 mile radius of my subject. Okay, it says, this is from Rick, I've had much better success contacting the cash buyers directly off the MLS. I don't know how you're getting their information, and getting their email info instead of calling the selling agent. Then again, I have tried to contact, I haven't tried to contract selling agents. Well, first off, the MLS would not give you their email, the buyer's email address. Okay, only in the MLS will they give you the selling agent's name, and the selling agent's maybe email depending on your MLS. But I have never seen an MLS where they actually give the email address of the buyer. That'd be interesting. If buying for yourself, Richard White, why use subject to? What's the advantage over a contract for deed? I just want full ownership of the property, where it's recorded full ownership of the property. It's just my preference of I could do a contract for deed, but I just rather have full contracted ownership of the property via deed. This is from Johnny. It says, so what type of deal would wholesaling a lease option fit, and would you recommend doing them? Okay. I rarely do wholesaling lease options because I can get more money on a down payment for an agreement for sale and a land contract than I would on a lease option. Remember, a lease option is a rental contract with a purchase contract. Typically, you're going to get down payments of $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. If I'm selling the property on an agreement for sale, then I'm looking for a significant down payment, which is going to be anywhere from 5 to 10% down, right, on the property, because it's a higher level of ownership than it is on a lease option. So you tend to make more money, right, on those particular deals than you do. That's why I rarely do lease options. RJ, how do you follow up with sellers that weren't really motivated at the time? Do you send them another letter or call? Well, we sort them out. If they say, listen, we're not motivated, we're thinking about selling, but we don't want to sell right now, or might think about selling in the future, then they go into a follow-up inside of FreedomSoft, right? If they call up and say, listen, we just don't want to sell, and like my guy I saw on Saturday, right? He wants $140,000 for the property. I would follow up with that guy, right? We offered 110 or whatever it was, 110, 115. So I would follow up with that guy, and as time progresses, when he doesn't sell the property, the motivation level will increase. And if his motivation level increases, then you come to that. Okay, so when you make an offer to a seller and the seller doesn't accept it and they're not motivated at that time, put that in a follow-up to see if their motivation level increases. I'll give you an example. I just got a property under contract for $19,500 last week. That's the one I think I told you about, in the war zone. That particular property, I've been following up with a guy since January. I first initially met with a guy in January, and he had some contract questions. He wasn't motivated at the time, but I knew the house was vacant. There was signs of motivation. He wanted to get rid of it. The house was vacant, right? So, follow up every month. How's it going? How's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Finally, met him at Jack in the Box for an hour and a half, talking to him about I don't know what he talked about. I think we talked about Scotch whiskey, which I hate Scotch whiskey, but he likes Scotch whiskey. So he wanted to talk about Scotch whiskey, so I talked about Scotch whiskey. And $19,500, signed the contract. Boom. How hard do you screen sellers prior to meeting them? Okay, first question, Matt. First off, the calls come in, they go into a voicemail system. Corey calls all the sellers and puts the data into FreedomSoft. Corey will determine if there's a level of motivation and it's a potential deal. If he determines a motivation, then I turn around, he'll outsource the lead to me and put him in a motivated folder. When they're now motivated, then what happens is I'm going to call them up and I'm going to determine the level of motivation, right? And possibly do a soft pass on them and just kind of see if there's a motivation there. If they pass my motivation level, then I'll go on an appointment. Now, that deal I went on yesterday, the house was free and clear, and the lady was crying on the phone because she just wanted to get rid of it because, remember, she's the one that looked like Snow White, the witch there, and she's on her fourth husband and a big mess, and she was like, I just got to get out of that. So, I was just like, called her up. I said, okay, I'll be over there. So dropped everything and went to the house and talked to her about it. We'll have that contract on Friday. Okay. Okay. Sean, this is from Sydney Phillips. Said, please help me how I could record the session. We're recording the session right now as I speak. It's the most helping session yet. This one is recorded. It will be available inside the Flip to Freedom Academy under Coaching Call Archives right here. If you click on Coaching Call Archives, and we usually typically, here's the archive for last week on May 30th. So what this will be replaced by this call. This will be registered. This will be registered for the 27th, right? That'll be registered for the 27th, and for the June 27th call. And this right here will be this call that we're the Coaching Call Archive will be up there. Someone in the Academy did all the marketing through Google AdWords. Is it true? Yes. Can this be found in the Academy? Yes. I think it's module like 6 or 7, right? It's all about how to market on Google AdWords. I give you the squeeze pages, the landing pages, the keywords. I give you everything. I spent over $100,000 testing keywords to figure out which one converted. And Brian is one of the Academy members, took those keywords, marketed them, did use the same website, same keyword, everything. And I think to date he's, I don't know, let me see, I'm going to put him, it's not in there. But he's made like $180,000 just off that one method alone. So, okay. Is the audio still breaking up? Someone said that at 12:44. That's a while ago. Okay, can you go over one more time the maximum minimum percentages that HUD will take? Okay, each market is different, and that has to be tested. So what do? Is you start at, say, 50% or 51%, and then you bid on a slew of properties. And then the next day you go up to, say, 56%, and you bid on a slew of properties. The next day you go up to, to say 61%. You bid on a slew of properties. Next day you go up to 66%. You bid on a slew of properties. And you'll find in your particular area the percentage. That's number one. Or number two, go to this HUD home tracker right here and just type in Phoenix or whatever and kind of see what percentages they're going for. Right here. Now you're going to look at properties that are over 30 days. Right here, 79.4% of list price. Right here, sale to net to HUD. Now this is net to HUD. List price 182.5. Sold for 74 of this price. Final asking 164.2. Sold 88% of this price. Oh, initial asking, final asking. Sale net to HUD. Now remember, this net to HUD is not. That's net to HUD. That's not including. That's not including the realtor commissions. This is net to HUD. Okay, so these obviously numbers are different. But you want to look at the days on market, like here, 147, 17th Avenue Drive here in Phoenix, 85045. So and what's the date on this? I don't see a date. So I'd look at the date on here, try to find a date, maybe cross-reference. But they're saying it's 84% of list price, sold for 93% of this price. So maybe look at this and do a little research, or you can pull in the MLS and figure out what properties have sold for. HUD properties have sold for. Okay, what if there's a title issue at closing and you already have an end buyer under contract with a non-refundable earnest money deposit contract and close in 7 days. One, clear the title issue, or two, you have to give back the earnest money deposit. Okay. My rule of thumb is this, is that I don't market the property until I have a title report. As soon as I have a title report and I know there's clear title, there's no issues or anything like that, then I will start calling buyers and market the property. Okay. So that's my rule of thumb, because I don't want to get the tire all, under contract, get the earnest money deposit, have them go all through the work and they go, oh, sorry, the property's in probate and we have to find this and that and the other. There's a lien on the property, right? It's a mess. So that just makes you look bad. It wastes the buyer's time. But I typically get a property under contract. I send it to the escrow, right? We get the title report as fast as possible. As soon as I get the title report, then, and I know it's clean and it's ready to go, then I am talking to buyers. If for some reason there is a title issue, I talk to the title company and figure out how to clear the title so we're ready to close. And I work through that and get everything ready to go prior to me marketing it. Now, if there is title issues on the property, I would definitely go back to the seller and they would help obviously clear it. But if I only have a 30-day contract, I might talk to the seller to try to get an extension on that, because we're gonna have to clear title issues. And in that case, I would do an addendum. Okay, it says, I did yellow letter with lead source, absentee leads. I did get some calls. However, none were motivated to sell. The owners have rented out these homes. What do I do with these leads? Next. First off, my first question is, how many did you send? Did you send 50 or did you send 5,000, right? If you sent 50, you didn't send enough. If you sent 100, you didn't send enough. If you sent 200, you didn't send enough. Right? You got to get a good basis of that. Absentee investors, you're looking for that one where they have the vacant property and now they want to get rid of it, right? So a good test with absentee, is send out 1,000 to 2,000 letters and you get some calls coming in. I personally think that you haven't probably sent out enough to get a really good test. But guess what? The majority of the call, think about it. If you send out 1,000 letters, and you get, say, theoretically 100 calls, and 25 out of every, 1 out of 25 is a potential deal, then you're talking about 4 potential deals. That means you have 96 of the people, right, that are, oh, I had it rented out. Oh, they're not motivated. So you're going to go through a bunch of dirt. 96 of them is going to be dirt, right? Right? And you might be able to structure seller financing if there's motivation there, right? And you're going to have 4 that's potential gold. That's just the way the numbers fly. Okay. If I'm going to make an offer in one of the moderately motivated seller, how much deposit money can I offer them minimum? It could be $10. You talk about earnest money? Do $10. On all the contracts for my first entire year, I did $10. If they ask for more and it's a deal, then put more down. But remember, you're going to have your out clauses in the contract, so you can get out of it and the earnest money is refundable. But $10. Okay, here's from Greg, who's used to be a realtor. Sean, referring to becoming a realtor question, I was a realtor for about 1 year and got a lot of static from my broker because of my marketing and other investor-related issues. I have since dropped the license and now have less headache and more money. No association fees. I also became an assistant to a realtor that I worked with, which legally gave me my own sign and access to the MLS. This realtor was happy to work with me because any retail/short sale leads that don't work for my business I gave to him. Trust me, he does not want to lose me as an assistant. P.S. I don't actually do anything work for him. I highly recommend people to seek out a realtor to work with them and become a legal assistant in order to access MLS. That's good. Thanks for the feedback, Greg. I appreciate it. I think also too a big thing is before you drop the realtor license, there's 50 billion brokers out there. Find a broker that doesn't care, right? A broker that's a little bit more working. Some brokers are so, oh my gosh, I cannot, you can't do that, right? And then some are just like, yeah, okay, you're fine. My wife's broker is great. I mean, the guy's, I talked to him. He's a good guy. He's my age. He's, he runs his brokerage office and he's good. Some are just jerks. This is from Mei Chen. Can the end buyer get a loan or can it be all cash? I answered that question earlier. How about pay all cash and then refi out of the loan? Yes, they can pay all cash, and depending on the credit and stuff like that, they can do a rate in term refinance. But what you're looking to do is sell a property to an all cash buyer or a buyer that can acquire private money via hard money financing or private money or whatever. So. If the economy, this is from Richard, if the economy stays at a low point or even gets worse, what would that mean for our investing, our investing strategies? Good. When the economy's bad, our business is easy because there's more motivated sellers that want to sell at a house, and the perceived, the perception of the market is bad, which you can negotiate a better deal. And if you can negotiate a better deal, you can still sell it into the marketplace because there's always buyers looking for good deals. If the market is booming and it's hot, it becomes a little bit more different, but the prices increase, inventories decrease, and now you can pay higher or negotiate higher prices for properties and still be able to make a profit. Like, I'll give an example. In October, November, December, I was bidding on HUD homes and getting them from 88 to 91% and being able to turn them and make, $7,000 to $10,000 per property. January hit here in Phoenix and the market went bananas, and now you can't get properties for less than, 109%, 110% of list price, right? And because the market now is increased and inventories have decreased, then guess what? I can still turn them and make a profit. So, what's great about this business is that the what you sell it for, an inventory level will change, but when the market's bad, the perceived value from the seller, you can negotiate a better price. When the market's good, right, it's a little bit harder to negotiate with the seller because the perception is there, but you can sell it for a higher price. So it just depends. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't worry about it. Let's do deals. What's your opinion about www.preforeclosure.com finding motivated sellers? Never used them, honestly, Robert. But if they're providing lists of pre-foreclosures, I would definitely mail pre-foreclosures. They're a little bit more harder to deal with because you're dealing with a very stressed out seller. So you have to recognize that and realize that you're dealing with a stressed out seller. You know what I mean? When you deal with a stressed out seller, you come in all different types of situations. But I have never tried it, but maybe you should try it. Yeah, this is from Richard. If someone closes a deal with you and then place under contract for sale, does that leave the seller in a position to have to qualify for 2 loans if they buy another house? Yes. Yeah. They have to qualify for 2 loans, yes, because they're going to have both loans on their credit. Okay. Where are we? Rick Jordan, it says, to get cash buyer's name, I cross-reference the MLS. Oh, you cross-reference. Okay. With our state's tax assessment website and owner's name, and then look them up on why. That's a lot of work. I just call the agent. It would be, try calling the agent, because they, and you can call the agent, the selling agent, and email the selling agent, because typically a selling agent that has cash buyers will have multiple, and it's okay, because they're just going to they're going to work for you. They're going to tack on their net price, their price on your, they're going to tack on their fee on your net price. And when they do that, they're going to work. They're going to get the contract. They're going to get the earnest money. They're going to get it signed. They're professionals, and they're working for you. And if they might have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 buyers in their pocket to turn around and sell properties to. What is the practical difference between agreement for sale and a contract for deed? It's just depending on the state. I don't think there's any. I think they're the same. Same instrument, I guess you could say, but depending on the state, they call it different things. This is from Richard. It said, on a lease option deals, if I find an investor up front, could I charge the investor a fee to put the deal together and manage it? Yeah, but then I don't like working for a fee. I'd rather work for a profit. So, so let's say if I was going to do that $19,500 deal, I'd rather negotiate the best price I possibly could and sell it for the highest price I possibly could and make the $30,000. Typically on a lease option deal, if you negotiate a fee, what's it going to be, $500? For me, it's not worth my time. How do you get a title report for free? Just tell them you're going to give them business. Tell them I'm going to give your business, and it's expected. I've never paid for a title report. Okay, here's from Anthony. It says, I contacted a seller in Sherman Oaks who has a house for sale, including $25K of new furniture and a car and gym equipment. Okay, I'd sell the house and I keep the furniture and car and gym equipment, if it's free and clear. He owes $500 and is selling for $500. It's a 4.3, 2,200 square feet, 8,000 square foot lot with over 15 different types of fruit trees. Cool. Comps are in the mid 400 range. What's the best plan of action for the property? Okay, best plan of action. This could be fun. First off is I would say, listen, we need 10 years. Either A, he comes out of pocket, because he's already going to come out of pocket if he's trying to sell for $500, or B, we say, listen, we're going to market the thing for $20,000 down. We're going to keep your $500,000 loan in place for 10 years, okay, and all the stuff comes with it, okay, and it's over. And I would show him it's $100,000 over market. But if a buyer comes in and they can have the seller financing with, say, $20,000 down for the term of 10 years, there might be time to work out of that. Okay, and someone might come along and see the value for that and be able to realize that they want to get in on it. And now we're at a low point in the market. So I try to do that and tell them, listen, it's completely subject to me finding obviously an end user buyer, but make sure you negotiate to keep the furniture, the gym equipment, the car, and all that stuff. Sell the property without that stuff. Keep that stuff. And say, listen, if I get $20,000 down, we'll split it. Whatever down payment I can get, Mr. Seller, we'll split it, and we'll split it 50-50. So now you're both in a line to find a person with the down payment of, say, $50,000 or $20,000. You split the down payment, but then you get to keep all the cool stuff. Well, this is from RJ, works in Northern California. HUD homes are few and are going for average of 90 to over 100% of list. They're going for over 100% of list here too. That is more than 80 and 90% of ARV. Now, in California, if the market is hot and deals are few and far between, then look at the price points of, like here in Phoenix, there might be 1 or 2 or 5 properties. There used to be 20 properties back in October and November. It'd take me 3 hours to go through bidding on the properties. Now there's like 2 or 3 properties. So, but I bid every single day on properties. So, and I can bid over list price because there's so limited amount of inventory, I can demand a higher price. Okay. So in that particular case, you really want to know your market, and you want to know what's selling cash, what's selling quickly, and know your inventory. If you have very, very low inventory levels, right, then you can pick these suckers up and then turn around and sell them and tack on $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on your price and be able to still sell them because there's such limited inventory. RJ, that is knowing your market of what is in high demand. So can you make money off that? I'm making money off bidding 120% a list, you know, so it's just because I know my market. This is from Mei Chen saying, I'm trying to find properties for friends. If they cannot buy cash, then what's the solution? Hard money. Hard money, private money financing. This is from Memphis Mike. He said, I got a house worth 50 and that needs work that can, I can get it for 20, needs no work, I can get it for 20. How would you present it to a buyer to make them want it and drop everything to buy it ASAP? I would tell them that the first thing I do is maybe you sell it for 30, you know, 30,000, say, is what, 60% of the property. I really know what the market is bearing. Maybe you sell for 25, right? 50% of value, right? And I call my buyer, my A plus, my buyers up, my best buyers. I call them up and say, hey, listen, you would not believe I got a smoking deal under contract, and I'm calling you first. Here's the information. Here's the property. Here's the address. It's worth 50. I can get it to you for $25,000. This is by far the cheapest property that has ever sold in the subdivision or in the area. It's by far the cheapest property that I have ever seen in the area. So I'm going to give it to you for 20, but I need an answer ASAP on the property. Here's the address. Here's the information. And here's the deal. I need to know by tonight if you want this property or not. If you don't, then it hits all my buyers tomorrow, and I know I'm going to sell this thing in lightning speed. But I'm giving you first shot at it, so let me know ASAP. And I would be making that call to about 3 or 4 or 5 of your top buyers and say the exact same thing. First one to the table first. And I'd tell the buyers, say, listen, I've got 2 or 3 other really good buyers looking for product like this. You know, so I am going to be calling a couple other people. It's a first come, first served basis. You're the first person I'm calling. Cool. Whew. All right. Memphis Mike's the last one. All right, guys. I've exhausted every question. It's been a 11, 12, 2.5 hour call. So we're having fun. Hope everybody's doing great. And make sure you register for the next call that we're going to have coming up on, I think, the 27th there. The registration will be right here for that. And on the coaching call, we'll have this archive, and we'll be up here under the coaching call archive for this particular one. So until then, thanks, guys, for being a part of this, and we'll talk to you in the future. Take care, and God bless.